Now by the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, one of two congressional committees investigating any Trump ties to Russia, Congressman Adam Schiff of California. Congressman Ken Delaney, my colleague, had this quote that I thought was interesting and made me think. He says, nonpartisan former senior intel official to me just now on unmasking fake scandal. It's like Iraq WMD, a theory in search of facts. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, it certainly is a theory in search of a villain, and for whatever reason, the hard right has always chosen Susan Rice to be their villain. I think you heard some snippets about that today. I was dragooned into service on the Benghazi Select Committee for 2 years. That committee's purpose was to take down Hillary Clinton's numbers. But one of the central figures the Republicans went after and after and after was Susan Rice. And after 2 years, they could find nothing that Susan Rice did wrong. In fact, the only thing Susan Rice did was go on Sunday morning shows and repeat what the Intelligence Committee best assessment of the early hours of Benghazi was. That was consistent with what we were hearing, what Susan Rice was hearing. And that's all they could find, which was perfectly appropriate on her part. So what it is they have about Susan Rice that they like to go after her, I don't know. But I do think you're right in your summation at the outset. This is yet another attempt to distract attention from the Russia probe, which they obviously want to defer and deflect as much as they can.
Now, you recently went to the White House after this long, complicated sort of, it seemed to me, misdirection play by the chair of your committee, Devin Nunes, possibly sort of laundering information from the White House that was given to him. He then briefed the White House about, all to maybe back up some kernel of some version of a tweet the president sent out about being, quote, spied on or wiretapped. You've now gone and viewed documents. They're classified, I imagine. But can you give us your reaction? Was it a, oh, yes, the president was right that he was wiretapped? Was it something else?
You know, while I can't go into the contents of those documents, I can tell you I haven't seen anything during the course of this investigation that backs up in any way, shape, or form President Trump's accusation against his predecessor, that his predecessor was illegally wiretapping him, or even the more broader allegation that he was surveilling him somehow. There's no basis for that whatsoever. And, you know, the Wall Street Journal just reported, and again, I don't know if this is accurate, but it would explain a lot of the skullduggery in the White House. They just reported that the White House itself generated these materials that they then wanted to share with the chairman alone and have the chairman report back to the White House. That would explain why Sean Spicer says it was in the ordinary course of business. Of course, there's nothing ordinary about it, unless the ordinary course of the White House business is trying to interfere in congressional investigations. But nonetheless, it's the first time that anyone has reported that these documents were by and for the White House. And if that's accurate, it would certainly explain a lot of why Sean Spicer and others in the White House were so desperate to hide their involvement.
A colleague of yours, Congressman Castro, earlier today said that if he had to bet, he would bet that people will go to jail over the end result of the investigation that the FBI is conducting. Do you agree with that?
Well, I'm not a betting man. The most I'm willing to say is we're at the very early stage of the investigation. I don't think any of us can tell where it will lead. And I don't think we should prejudge the outcome. We should instead dedicate ourselves to following the facts wherever they lead. So I'm not prepared to bet on any particular outcome. I just want to make sure that we get to the bottom of this.
I want to ask you about Carter Page, an individual who has been often mentioned in reports as a subject of investigation because of his contacts with possibly Russian intelligence officials. There's a story that he was a target of Russian spies for recruitment, passed them documents, BuzzFeed said. And today responded and said, I didn't want to be a spy. He said in an interview with ABC News, I'm not a spy. Is Carter Page someone that you guys are going to have come before the committee?
You know, he's certainly a person of interest, and I think at the appropriate time we are going to want him to come before the committee. As has been reported even prior to the report you're referring to, he was in Moscow during the course of the campaign, and there are allegations by Christopher Steele, that British former intel officer that is reportedly held in high regard by U.S. intel, that he had clandestine meetings there was potentially offered a stake in this transaction involving Rosneft, this massive Russian oil company. So we obviously want to get to the bottom of those allegations, find out whether there's any truth to them. But at this point, I can't comment on anything we may be learning privately.
Are you confident, and this strikes me as the most important question at the heart of all this, with the steps the White House has taken to reach in, it appears, according to reports, reach into American intelligence apparatus to pull out selective bits of information to possibly feed to people, can you be confident that the integrity of the counterintelligence investigation that we now know the FBI is undertaking can be protected and secure?
Well, that really depends on the director of the FBI to maintain the independence of that bureau, and even more importantly, to be proactive, not reactive, and do everything possible to get to the bottom of these allegations. I think we can fully expect, because, you know, one thing you can tell about this president, he is not going to change. He is who he is. So if they're making efforts at the White House to interfere with our investigation, they're going to continue to do that throughout the investigation. Whether they will, risk doing that with the FBI, I don't know. But we need to count on the Bureau to maintain the integrity of that investigation. And I can assure you, no matter what the White House throws at us, we're going to be pressing forward. We're determined to overcome any obstacle and use every resource we have. And one of the most powerful ones that we have is, frankly, public scrutiny. This is why I've been so adamant that we do as much of this investigation as we can publicly. It's why I continue to call on our chairman to reschedule the hearing with Sally Yates and directors Brennan and Clapper. If we do this all in private, and at the end of the day we issue a report that was compiled in private, the public is not going to believe it. The public needs to come every step of the way in this investigation, so we need to be as transparent as we possibly can.